Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Meisel, Regional Director of Anti-Defamation League's Santa Barbara Tri-Counties office, serving Santa Barbara, Ventura, and San Luis Obispo counties. ADL has, for over 100 years, been a leader in exposing extremism, countering anti-Semitism, delivering anti-bias education, and fighting hate. You can learn more about us at santabarbara.adl.org. I'm here to conduct this Q&A because for the last 6 years, our regional office has presented the ADL Stand-Up Award at the Santa Barbara National Film Festival to a film that exemplifies the impact storytelling can have in fostering mutual understanding and respect, consistent with ADL's longtime mission to secure justice and fair treatment to all. The award is being sponsored this year by the Skinner Social Impact Fund, Steve and Cindy Lyons, and Juliana and Tom Dane. We're pleased to be presenting that award this year to the film Trees of Peace. And I'm thrilled to introduce the film's writer and director, Alana Brown, and producer, Ron Ray. Congratulations to you both, and welcome to the Q&A.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
much. It's such an honor to receive this recognition. I could not be prouder to be aligned with the ADL anti-hate mandate. It's truly, truly such an honor. Thank you.
Well, this is one of the benefits for us and for me personally of sponsoring this award is the ability to meet with the filmmakers and to explore more than what we saw on screen. And I know our jury really truly appreciated the experience of this film on screen. It was an emotional experience for them. And I don't want to give away anything about the film or the film's ending because I know that some watching this Q&A eventually may not have seen the film. But we'll do our best to kind of provide some context and explore some events off screen. So I'd love to start kind of at the genesis and to hear about the genesis of the project for you. You know, why Rwanda? Why this story set in that context?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. It started in, gosh, I conceived of this many years ago, probably maybe 10 years ago. I was writing a journalistic piece for an online magazine, and the subject of the piece was a woman who founded a trade, not aid initiative in Rwanda called Same Sky to help rehabilitate women survivors. And in researching and preparing to interview her over the phone, I started coming across stories of people hiding in all kinds of, some of the most extreme circumstances you can possibly imagine, hiding in for an extended period of time, and particularly women's stories. And I just found it all so compelling, the will to live, the will to survive, to do anything possible, anything you can to survive. And then with that, in the same bout of research, learning something I had never heard before, which was that Rwanda has the highest percentage of women appointed to government of any country in the world. And nobody I've ever talked to since then has known that fact until I told them. And everyone is equally as floored and equally as amazed. And so when I, first learned of that, I was like, oh my, wow, like this is a story that needs to be explored. I felt like other stories of the genocide had been told, Hotel Rwanda comes to mind, and there are others as well that I feel like give a broader, bigger, sweeping picture of the genocide at large. But I wanted to really do an intimate portrait of the women of the country and of the genocide. And so that was the impetus that was the inception of the film.
And how long ago, when did this first start germinating in your mind?
Yeah, so that was probably 11 years ago. Probably in 2010 was around the time that I was conducting that interview. And then I started doing the research, et cetera, and really started writing the script, like words on the page, in 2012. And from there, it was a 2-year process writing the script. It was the first feature script I'd ever written. I'd done shorts before then. But so this was my first crack at a feature script. And I learned a lot over the process. Writing a screenplay is always such a long process of writing and rewriting, somewhat eternally, even into the post-production, into the editing room, there's still a form of rewriting that goes on. And so, but getting the script in really good, strong shape was, I'd say, a 2-year process, which culminated in a table read. I hired a theater and invited a bunch of people to actors to participate in the table read, and then a fairly large audience, maybe not like 15 people, to come and give feedback And it was a real moment of truth moment because it was, being exposed to a bunch of people out loud for the first time, and it was so well received, and that was a really like fortifying moment for me to keep going forward with the script.
I don't think I'm giving too much away by saying it's this harrowing story of 4 women that are confined in a hiding place. Was that the story from the beginning in the script for you, or did it evolve into that as you were exploring and reading and mid script with interviews?
Yeah, it actually has changed shape. It started off with 7 women. One was a child, a little girl named Sifa, and it just changed shape, and evolved over the years. And I think as many stories do and many scripts do as they go through iterations. And I think focusing on 4 characters, I was able to really give create a fullness and create put a real life and story, a full story, full character arc, full backstory into each one of the characters by not having 7, but by having 4. And then, once I wrote it really contained intentionally, it was always going to be a small number of women in a room because, well, one, I wanted to focus on the women of the genocide, and the women, the Tutsi women, the Hutu moderate Hutu sympathizers were in hiding. So this was their setting. A hiding place was their setting. And so I always knew it was going to be contained because I wanted to just focus on the women in their setting and what they were going through. And also for budgetary purposes, I knew that, I had this plan that I would go out and raise the money myself if I had to, that I would shoot it on a micro budget. And so I wrote it to be economical to shoot. And and yeah, I think, yeah, again, 4 characters, I was able to center the story and really focus heavily and give each woman um, their due attention. I feel like, if there is one lead character, you can pinpoint it on Anik, but I'd say it's really an ensemble, and it's really an even share of the weight of the film.
So as you're conceiving this story that you know is going to be a confined space,
Mhm.
uh, were you exploring other stories that had been confined like that? I noticed that I think it was in one of the promotional videos that you created, perhaps to help with funding, that
Mhm.
a character was quoting from, I think it was Anne Frank's diary. And so I wondered, was that also a source you referred to? And were there other kind of inspirations for how to tell a story about confinement?
Absolutely. And Frank was a big inspiration. There was a time when so the opening of the film has supers that kind of explain what's happening at this time. And there was a time when that quote from the Diary of Anne Frank was meant to be at the top of the film as well, and it ended up getting cut. But that was a big piece of inspiration for the film from a character emotional standpoint. A lot of true stories from Rwanda of people hiding in all kinds of just, again, like I said, really extreme circumstances. I ended up going to Rwanda in 2019 to interview, to do further research. I felt, I can't possibly direct this film without going to Rwanda first and setting foot there. And I went to a bunch of genocide memorial sites and spoke to survivors and perpetrators. And one woman, told the story that her and her brother hid in the swamp. It's actually not called a swamp. I can't remember what the name of the landscape actually is, but it's very similar to a swamp. They would hide in the swamp all day long, up to here in water, and then only at night could they sneak out, try to find food. And for 30 days, for ongoing periods of time, people hiding in an attic. There was a story of a man who hid in a suitcase for 2 weeks, and he would go from a suitcase to an attic to just different places to go and hide. And so even before going to Rwanda, finding those survival stories online, watching other narrative films. There's a wonderful film called Sometimes in April that it was the first narrative film made post genocide, and it's a really good look at the events and the timeline and everything that happened. It's like a reenactment basically, but it's a narrative. So yeah, and then from a sort of a technical standpoint, there's a film that my touchstone for the technical side of making the film was a film called Buried with Ryan Reynolds. Super different, two super different, genre thriller action film, but it's this one man in a box the entire film, super contained. And so just looking at like their behind the scenes footage, how did they do that? How did they make that the pace of that movie run and make it compelling and interesting with one guy in a box the entire film? So that was a
Interesting.
structural kind of a touchstone for me. Yeah.
So now, Ron, I'm imagining that you got involved in this transition from script to screen. At what point did you get involved, and what drew you to the story?
It's interesting. I actually met Alana on Instagram, and when I met her, I was actually looking for a script to direct, and she started following me, and I looked at her Instagram posts, and I said, and at that point, I had read up to 4,000 scripts, and her script was actually 4,001, and just by looking at her Instagram writing, I knew that she's so authentic the way she writes, and she's different. So I reached out to her and I introduced her to my wife, and I said, hey, would you be interested in writing something together with me? And she was like, yeah, sure. She goes, I see you have a production company. I've been trying to get this movie made for 5 years. There are 10 different producers attached. It fell through. Would you be interested in producing it? And I'm like, look, I'm really focused on directing. So I initially said no to her, but let me read your script. That night when I read the script, I sat there. I was in Vancouver at that time in the balcony. I'm going, oh my God, I have like an Oscar-winning script in my hand. I haven't read something this good. I mean, it literally made me rethink my whole narrative. And I also knew that in the studio system, Alana's a first-time female African-American director. They're probably not going to let her direct this, and she needs to direct this because they would bring in named actresses, because if a producer thought it was an Oscars-winning script, they would bring in all the named actresses. At that point, they would try to bring in experienced director. And I was really passionate about her passion towards this project and that she never gave up. For 5 years, she's fighting for this. So then next day I actually called her and I said, you know what, I'm going to produce this. And I changed my mind. And then I think the whole time she thought I was catfishing her, and I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then when we went to raise funding, we had a tough time raising funding. It's always tougher for the first time director. So then what I did was I had some funding sitting there for my directorial debut. I basically put that on this movie and went all in on basically Alana and her. I believe in her talent, her drive. She's one of the hardest workers in the room. She's the most genuine, authentic person when it comes to what she does. And I felt like, and I told her from day one, you're going to be somebody in Hollywood. And I don't know if she believed me at that time, but here we are.
It's great to have somebody along the ride that has so much faith in you, right from the beginning. That goes a long way. So now you're moving in the direction to production, and before we get to kind of the elements of production itself, you must have been thinking right off the bat about casting. So can you talk about how you found your 4 leads, really 5 leads, and who they are and where they're from?
Yeah, well, I always knew I wanted it to be as authentic as possible. And I initially, it's funny, when I first conceived of the script, I wanted it shot in Rwanda. I wanted it all Rwandese actresses. I wanted it in Kinyarwanda, and then that vision, I had to, make compromises there for budgetary purposes, et cetera. But I still knew that I wanted authentic African actresses to play the roles. And so once we got into production, knowing we were going to shoot on a soundstage in Los Angeles, I knew that for the role of Anik, I wanted a Rwandese actress. That was like first and foremost for me. And so what was really helpful was simultaneously when I had met Ron and I had been through years of various producers coming and going, shopping agreements that, I sat on for a year and they didn't move the needle. And as you know, the concept trailer I made, I did a Kickstarter campaign. There was a lot going all that time. And so then by the time I met Ron, I was so fed up with, the kind of waiting for permission thing you hear filmmakers say that, that started as indie filmmakers. They say, stop waiting for permission. So in 2019, right as I was meeting Ron, I was planning my trip to Rwanda because I was like, I'm making this movie this year. And I had raised $65,000 on Kickstarter. So I was going to do it for the micro budget. And so in Rwanda, I met a producer, filmmaker named Eric Kabera, who was very helpful. And so he's the founder of what they call Hillywood, because Rwanda is the country of 1,000 hills. So he spearheaded the film movement in Rwanda. And was able to connect me to their leading Rwandese actresses to send self-tapes for the film. And it's funny because Eliane Umuhire was the first taped audition we received for the production. And I cried watching her tape. I got chills and I just was like, she's Anik. She is her in the flesh. I knew it. We had other auditions as well, but it was always Anik. It was always Eliane. She's like the same, they're like the same person. It was always her. And it was, man, it was a really intense journey getting her O1 visa approved, because we cast her. And, you know, in hindsight, now I would tell anyone who's flying in an actor from overseas, give yourself like 8 months to get the O1 visa secured. And I think we had like 3 months. And
Well, basically,
it was like literally down to like a day of potentially having to replace her if we didn't get the O1 visa approved. And it was
my.
we locked financing end of June and we started shooting in October. And that's not a lot of time. But Alana and I both were like, it's got to be her. I mean, we literally pulled out every stop. And I mean, we were looking for alternate, but it had to be her. We were like, there's nobody else.
Yeah.
And it worked out in the last second. It came through.
Yeah.
So she played the Hutu moderate, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And then you had a Tutsi woman. The character's name was, is it Mutesi? Tell us about the actor for that role.
Yeah, so Bola Koleosho is amazing. All the actresses are tremendous, and if you've seen the film, you know they're all incredibly, incredibly talented, and this movie wouldn't be what it is without them. I called them the one-take wonders because we could only get max three takes on any setup, on any shot, and usually maybe 1 or 2, and they always nailed it the first time. But Bola was, so we went to some management and agencies for some of the actresses, and then we also had an open casting call. We hired casting directors and Anissa Williams and Zorda Horder, who were wonderful to work with, and they brought in a bunch of African actors and actresses for us to have read. And Bola, we had, I think, 3 days of casting, and Bola came in. She was one of the last actresses on the last day. It's so funny because these stories, a lot of them are like just nick of time, you know, really magical moments. But she was one of our last actresses to come in and read. And we were like, you know, there's some really good talent here, but we, you know, there's just a spark. There's something that you look for in an actor. They have this life behind in their eyes that they just embody the character in a way that is almost intangible. And she had that. And she came in, she read, she left, and I was like, it's her, it's definitely her. And our casting director called her immediately as she was leaving, and it was like, Bola, come back, they want you to do one more scene just to be certain she was still in the area. She came running back and read one more scene, and we were like, she's it. So she was from an open casting call.
Okay, and then is it Charmaine that played your Tutsi nun?
Yes, Charmaine Bingwa. So she is at my same agency. She's with UTA, and one of our producers, Barry Levine, was able to help sort of pinpoint her among the Rolodex at UTA and roster at UTA, and you know, they invited her to audition. She sent a self-tape in. I met with her over lunch in Toluca Lake, and she was wonderful. She was so committed to the character Jeanette. When we met and spoke, she had a lot of insights into what she would bring to the character, and she just, I was like, okay, she's the one. She was it.
Didn't she write you a handwritten letter, Alana?
She did. She wrote me a beautiful handwritten letter about, you know, her reaction to the script and how powerful she felt it was, and how it felt, you know, it felt like it tied to her life experience, and just how much she wanted to play this role of Jeanette, that she would do her justice and bring her to life. So.
And your fourth lead was
Ella Cannon.
Ella Cannon?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. She was also, Barry Levine also was able to pinpoint her through the management company Forward. She was repped there, and he had ties to that company, and they submitted a handful of talent to send self-tapes for the role of Peyton. And that's another one that was, it's funny, she was the first Peyton tape that I saw, and I thought she was wonderful. And so she sent herself tape early on, like in, I want to say June, when we first got funding, we first started going out to cast. And but it felt like, the first person, we need to like make sure that we see everyone, we need everyone, because it can't just be the first person. Same with like Ilian, even though I knew, we still auditioned other people. And so it was funny because when we brought Ella in for the callback in person in the room, she was hired. She said she was certain that she just didn't get the job. She had auditioned and sent her first self-tape in like a couple months ago. She just kind of had forgotten about it. And then I was like, no, you were always, top of mind, because she just again had that thing, that intangible thing, that quality where she just enlivened Peyton in a way that really nobody else did.
So on the production schedule, the short production schedule that Ron mentioned, there may not have been much time for rehearsal, but this is a very emotional script, kind of from beginning to end. Were you able to find that rehearsal time, or did it have to occur during production?
We were very fortunate to have 1 week of rehearsal. So we had 5 days of rehearsal, and we used it up, and it was a very valuable time. I, of course, did my homework during pre-production to bring to the table, and the actresses, again, were so wonderful in doing their homework as well. So we all came super, super prepared. And during my script analysis, I go through every scene. I find not only the arc of the overall story, but the arc of every scene from scene to scene, tracking the arc of the scene, the arc of every character from scene to scene, and every piece, the subtext of every piece of dialogue for every character. So I bring that. I like to bring behavior for the characters, and I like to give each character a secret that nobody else knows. And so we went through that in rehearsal. And then again, they of course brought their own stuff that they had discovered in reading and rereading the script and working on their characters. And so it was really cool, because when we got into rehearsal, I was, of course, nervous, like, oh man, is work, any given scene, we're going to have to really workshop these scenes. It's going to be work. It's going to take time. And it was like, first read through, magic. It was really like this puzzle fitting together with them. It was just the synergy, the chemistry was there from day one of rehearsal.
I want to say one thing. One thing I loved about Alana, a lot of first-time directors don't have this confidence that she had, where she didn't care if we had a named actress or not. She cared about the quality of acting. And her and I had this conversation. She said, I know so-and-so is a name. Would it be okay? I'm like, pick the person you think is right for the part. We'll handle everything else. And I give her so much credit for that, because she stayed authentic to that, because so many first-time directors think you need to have this, you need to have that. She focused just on the story and the actors and actresses she wanted. And the other part is, I find this is really gratifying, because Tongai, who played the husband, he was actually part of the original trailer that Alana had done. So Alana, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, Tongai was there from the beginning. He was actually one of the actors I brought into the table read back in like 2014. And I think he kind of, we always stayed in touch and stayed friends. And then I brought him back in for the proof of concept trailer. And he was always, again, another, like, he was Francois. He just really embodied it. And we did auditions. We held auditions, and we had other actors audition for Francois. And he came back. He came in, and he was willing to audition. And he won it fair and square. I mean, it was like, I knew from the beginning, but it was only reaffirmed that he really was Francois in the flesh when he came and auditioned, and he really fought for the part.
For those watching, that he's the husband who's essentially taking care of this group, but from afar. And so, yes, there's some very intense, most of his scenes are pretty intense moments of reconnection and separation, which were handled really beautifully. So you're shooting on location in LA. You've got, I'm assuming you're working on some kind of sound stage. So you have confined space within confined space. Were there particular challenges about that? Were there any happy surprises about being confined to a relatively small set?
Yeah, I would say the happy surprises, the biggest sort of benefit to that was getting to shoot chronologically, which a lot of films don't get to do, because it's like you're at various locations, that's expensive, so you're going to knock out all your scenes at one location and oftentimes get your scenes out of order. So it was really nice, because for the actresses to create a real sense of that fatigue and that like long-term sense of confinement, coming back to the same space day after day, 20 days in a row, not 81 days, but 20 days in a row, and getting to shoot chronologically so that the emotion is tracking progressively the entire way rather than like jumping around. And, you know, as a director, it's my job to, one of my jobs to make sure that the emotional truth is tracking from scene to scene. And that helped make my job a little bit easier because it was like, you know, the scene we came from in the story is actually the scene we just came from in, you know, the shooting schedule.
That could be really helpful with the emotion as it's building over time. I can
Well,
imagine.
not only that, our actresses lost between 12 to 20 pounds in 20 days.
Oh my.
So, I mean, that's a ordeal in itself. And having the confined space really helps shooting wise because we can control the environment. So we could move, you know, one of the walls out and shoot like the way we needed to, which really, and 20 days is a luxury in a, you know, lower budget movie. Yeah, I mean, you have to shoot the movie in 12 days. So having that confined space, having 20 days, it really allowed us to make the movie that Alana wanted to make. And then it allowed the actresses to, you know, go through that very rigorous diet. I mean, I don't know how Ella lost 12 pounds. I mean, she was so skinny to start with. And
Yeah.
Charmaine lost 20 and we literally had to pull her aside and said, okay, you're going a little too method now. But that's how dedicated they were to the craft.
They were very dedicated from the start with that. It was a request of mine from the beginning in interviewing with them and offering them the roles that it would be a requirement of the part to actually gain 5 pounds before, gain 5 to 10 pounds before the start of the shoot so that they would have more to lose so that wouldn't be as dangerous. And we hired a dietitian who was Ron's lovely wife, Michelle Ray. And she was, you know, on the job with them, meal prep, calorie cutting, safely making sure that they could drop that weight in real time over the course of, which is another great thing, like Ron's saying, that we shot it chronologically because they can lose the weight chronologically. And the second AD could steer them away from craft service as they walked to set. So, yeah.
Well, I thought it was really nice the way that you kind of expanded our world of watching the film with sound design. There was a lot of kind of reliance on our imagination for some of what otherwise would have been the most difficult things to watch. And I'm wondering if that sound design was something that you crafted in advance so the actors had the benefit of hearing it, or are they reacting to nothing and this sound design, those sound effects came in later?
That is a really good question, really interesting question. It's in the script. The sounds are written in the script because the way the script is written for people reading it, you know, all the actors, all the voices that are not in the room, everything's via, you know, with the character name. And I made sure to describe what's happening in the room and the sounds happening outside. So the reader was very clear that this is a contained story and you're not seeing what, you know, what you're hearing. And so we were fortunate enough that the actors we ended up having do ADR, we actually brought them to set and we had them acting in real time while we're shooting in the box, shooting the women, but we have the actors playing those exterior roles, acting out those parts so that the women could be reacting in real time. I'd say the only, well, I don't want to give any spoilers, but there was one major scene where I feel like Eliane's, to call her Anik, Eliane's performance is just like, and we're just close, tight on her face, seeing her react, and that was pure imagination. So that was, because to shoot that scene, we shot those scenes totally separately. So that was the one scene where we didn't have the exterior action happening for her, and she was just pure imagination, and we got that reaction from her.
So I'm interested, you know, there's discussion after the film about kind of this process of reconciliation. And it really seems in Rwanda, a post-genocide, and it seems like that concept really kind of filtrates throughout the whole script and the story, and what's happening between the women in the room. And I'm wondering, is that something that you talked about with them as a concept kind of from the beginning, that to some extent this may model what happens externally afterwards? How did you address that topic in the preparation and the directing of these scenes?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I think it was always sort of meant to be a look at, you know, there's the war without and there's the war within. There's the war raging inside, and it is sort of a microcosm. The war, you know, this box is a microcosm of the war at large. And the reason we're at war at large is because we can't drop our barriers and see that we're all in pain and we're all human. We all share a lot of these human experiences that cause us to put up barriers instead of break down those walls and see each other as humans with this shared experience. So that was what I wanted to do, is take that larger idea of this like big war happening and put it in just a small version of the war among these women. And so in doing that, I think as a writer, starting with like anything that I write, you know, you start with theme. And so if that reconciliation, say, is a theme, or unity, that each character, I'm building in each character to have an individual story that ties into that theme of reconciliation or forgiveness or healing within themselves, so that it bolsters and tells the ultimate like overarching theme of the movie. So I made sure to give each character that arc and that individual story that ties into the larger theme of the film. Does that answer your question?
It does. There was one line that stood out to me, and that was when the main character said, "We must love ourselves to be able to love each other."
Mhm.
And as soon as I heard it, I wondered whether that came from the mouth of somebody you were interviewing, or that was you wrapping up kind of the concept in that moment.
Yeah, that came from me. That came from the writing, and it's just a personal belief. I think there's a lot of my personal belief system in the movie, and I believe it's true. You know, like I said, I think there's a war raging within all of us. You know, that we all have the human experience and the human struggle that we contend with, and so just as a human being dealing with my own emotions and my own issues in life and growing up and whatnot, that learning really self-love, loving kindness for the self comes first, and we have to heal ourselves and love ourselves to be able to love each other and stop war. I mean, I personally believe, and this might be going a little off topic, so I'll keep this short, but I personally believe that, you know, the problems of the world, you know, racism and hatred and all kinds of things are really projected self-hate. I think it's really, you know, a projection, a misprojection of internal things that are happening that that person hasn't healed. And so for me, that was pouring that into the film was really a big part of it.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Certainly aligns with a lot that ADL does, and what we see in the world.
Yeah.
So you couldn't have been imagining this world when you first started this project. You weren't probably imagining a pandemic. And so it's an interesting experience from a viewer. On one hand, we identify with isolation because we've all been in isolation. On the other hand, we don't identify with being with four strangers, maybe in a confined space. And so I'm interested in kind of your thoughts as the world that this film comes out to, emerges in. You know, how, you know, connect it to kind of the world that it is now. How does it impact people's experience of the film? How does it impact your experience of audiences finally connecting with this film?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting. I think the timing is really sort of, it's almost kismet because people have been forced to be in confinement. You know, it's not confinement in a 5 by 5 foot box, but it's
Nor under
certainly
those circumstances outside, correct?
exactly. But you know, it's been a really intense year for people dealing with COVID, and I think that it only makes the confinement and the message of the film even stronger. I mean, I would think and I would hope. I guess we'll see soon enough. But I think it really kind of aligns sort of synergistically with the current events that are happening surrounding the pandemic and quarantine, and being that like part of the message of the film is and here's another thing that, you know, audiences may or may not take away, but this is for me something that I discovered in writing and directing the film, is that the box is a metaphor for the place inside ourselves that we don't want to visit. You know, this is the place where our demons come to get us, and nobody wants to be trapped there. And you know, less so trapped there with someone that you would consider an enemy in the world. And so I think it's interesting because if we were forced to be trapped in this place, we'd be forced to deal with our issues. We'd be forced to either find healing, you know, find healing in order to survive. And in doing that, with that healing, I think that that would really dissolve a lot of the walls that we put up. And so I think, you know, I hope, and I personally in my life have been finding that people have been, through the pandemic, people have been reassessing some of their values and some of their, priorities. And I just hope that that, again, aligns with the message of the film, and that people have been kind of forced to sit still and do some self-reflection and some introspection. And I just feel like that does kind of go hand in hand with some of the messages of the film.
Yeah, we certainly have been experiencing these silos that we're in. And I certainly hope that there's this thirst coming out of this experience just to experience other, even if it's not somebody we completely disagree with, but maybe to have a more positive appetite to engage with people that we disagree with.
Absolutely. And I think we are. I think that there's this thing that we've kind of come to learn, that we're all kind of living in an echo chamber, especially with social media. And there's a lot of confirmation bias. And like you just said, I hope that people will start to venture out and start to inquire about, what someone who they think they might not agree with, but what that person thinks or has to say, or what their worldview is.
So this film festival is the world premiere for the film. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Is there a hope or a plan for what comes next for this film? And then do you have thoughts on follow-up projects?
We actually have, distributors are looking at our movie as we speak, and we've had a tremendous response. And also, there's a few other festivals that, we have plans to, attend. At this point, our sole focus is Santa Barbara. This is a very prestigious festival. I've been here before, like almost 7 years ago. I'm very impressed with how they do things, and Alana and I were so excited and honored when we found out, and we spoke to the staff and Mickey and the way they run it. So that's our focus right now. And after that, depending on how we do and then what happens, most movies distributors come later. In our case, the distributors are already looking at the movie as we speak. So we'll kind of make some decisions as producers, what we do based on what happens in the next, 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, and hoping to also, we're looking at some other festivals to screen out later in the year.
Yeah.
We're very excited and proud to have a premiere at Santa Barbara International.
And do you have any sites you'd like to give viewers for where they can find out more information or to follow what's going on, and any shout outs you'd like to give while you have the opportunity?
Yeah, my Instagram, I post a lot about the film. I'm on Instagram at A Brown Girl Films. There's also the film handle on Instagram at Trees of Peace Film. And there's the website, treesofpeace.com. Or is it treesofpeacefilm.com? It might be Trees
of Peace.
It's treesofpeace.com. Okay, thank you. And I will also say, yeah, I would love to give shout outs. I mean, I know I've said the actresses have been absolutely tremendous, and the film wouldn't be what it is without them. And also have to shout out Ron right here, because I mean, honestly, this movie would not have gotten made without him. He single-handedly made the difference. He spent years trying to breathe life into this film and get financing, and it was such a struggle. I can't even tell you the hoops and hurdles I have jumped through over the years. And to the point where when he did come along, I was like he said, I thought I was being catfished. And I just kind of, at that point, I kind of doubted it, honestly. I was kind of like, okay, we'll see. Like, I've been told that people have funding before, like, okay. And then within a few months, it was like, we have equity financing. And then thank you to those financiers, Brian Bannickhead and Jeff Spiegel, two very special guys who have been super, super supportive of this film and believed in my vision. And yeah, and Ron just took this ball and ran with it. And he was doing his producing thing, putting out fires, approving overtime for me so I could get the film that I wanted to get. And so thank you so much, Ron.
Yeah. I wanted her to make the movie she wanted to make. And I wasn't gonna, and I'm a director and I'm a director's producer, right? So I wanted her to literally what she envisioned, to have every opportunity to make that movie. And I'm so proud of her. She's like a little sister to me, and her career has taken off since the movie hasn't even come out yet. And she's doing some amazing things already. I don't know if we're at liberty to talk about those things, but I'm just really proud of her. When I met her fight in her, and also the message, that she was giving out is what got me going, you know what? I need to go all in on this because I want to champion women. I want to champion women of color. I want to champion people that don't have these things. And I couldn't have done what she did as a director for this movie. So that was really important to me that she directs this movie. And I'm very proud of her. She's done an amazing job.
Thank you.
The outcome is clearly a testament to the passion that you both put in this. It comes out on screen and it enriches the audience experience. So I congratulate you again on the film, on the award, and on the festival premiere. Wish you the best of luck with this project going forward. We'll be eager to follow it and to applaud along the way. So thank you both for joining this Q&A and providing this experience for really your audience. I just want to thank again the sponsors for the ADL Stand-Up Award, the Skinner Social Impact Fund, Steve and Cindy Lyons, and Juliana and Tom Dane. Thank the festival for this continuing relationship that they've had with ADL and our ability to champion films like this. And hope everyone has enjoyed watching the Q&A and other films and experiences during the festival. So,
and I just want to say thank you to ADL, and we're honored. And thank you so much for what you guys do. It's really inspiring, and it touched our hearts. And thank you so much.
Yes.
Well, hopefully we'll have more information about the film also at santabarbara.adl.org. So we may be another source ourselves of a connection to the filmmakers.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much again. This has been great.
Thanks. So take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.